I think a lot of people have growth mindsets. I haven't met that many people who have high performance mindsets. I'm not ashamed of the fact that I have massive goals and I am allowed to be a good mum and have big goals and pursue them at the same time.
And maybe controversial. Do we bring it on ourselves?
I think that we have it wrong with the term have it all. Do I tick all of the boxes? No. Not sorry. I have suffered with extreme, almost debilitating self-doubt. If not you, then who? If not now, then when?
If you've got an idea,
Yeah, go
what's
for it.
the worst that could happen?
Most of the successful people in the world are driven by either insecurity or trauma. It happened to me. I was like, I want to quit. This is embarrassing. Nobody thinks I'm good enough. I'm not good enough. Like, this is a bad idea. It's a bad idea.
What you do today isn't going to be enough for tomorrow. So how do you tell it to yourself?
I really think the key to a happy life is...
Hello and welcome to another episode of Fearless Fireside Chats. I have an episode for you that promises to be unafraid, unfiltered, and totally unapologetic. If you're ready to challenge the norm and have a conversation that really matters, then you've come to the right place. Just one quick thing for me before we begin. To make sure that these fearless conversations continue happening, I have a really big favor to ask. I would be so grateful if you could please subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening. Completely free and just takes a couple of seconds to do. And your support will really help us reach more people, break more barriers, and gets us one step closer to our mission of making people feel heard, seen, and understood. Thank you so much. Enjoy the episode. Hi, friends. Today, I am joined by the incredible Lottie Whyte, CEO and co-founder of MyoMaster, UK's fastest growing wellness and health business. Lottie's journey started by building a business on her kitchen table with a newborn baby, may I add, and took it straight into the den to face off with the dragons. Not only did she survive it, she is thriving beyond it. And for me, that really shows true determination, grit, resilience, and sheer ambition. But what about those personal struggles and battles that she's faced along the way and through her journey that's made her who she is and has got her to where she is? We are covering it all from limiting beliefs to self-doubt to growth opportunities and feeling the fear and doing the damn thing anyway. I hope you enjoy today's episode. Without further ado, let me introduce you to Lottie.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Welcome to Fearless Fireside Chat.
Thank you.
You talk a lot about high-performing mindset. Tell me a bit about that. And also, how does it differ from all of the other mindsets, specifically actually a growth mindset?
Yeah, so I think you can't have a high performance mindset without having a growth mindset. But I think the difference is that having a high performance mindset is committing to unlocking your full potential every single day and operating at the highest kind of frequency that you possibly can and committing to doing that over and over again. Whereas a growth mindset is really about committing to learning and committing to evolving and committing to be open to the fact that you don't know everything and that you can develop and change. And I think a lot of people have growth mindsets. I haven't met that many people who have high performance mindsets.
What tears the two apart from a personality trait perspective?
I think you can be any type of person, any type of personality and have a high performance mindset. And that's something I've really learned. I spend a lot of time with very successful entrepreneurs now. I just spent a weekend away with 30 founders of the fastest growing companies in the UK. And they're all different types of people. Like some of them are super laid back. Some of them are what you would typically expect a high performance mindset to be, like intense and
Driver mindset.
But what I've realized is it's not necessarily defined by personality traits. I think it's defined by intention and commitment. And it's defined by often having a very clear purpose and a very clear goal that keeps you getting up every day and being committed to operating at a really high performance level. And for me personally, I'd say I have a high performance mindset and I execute on it probably 75% of the time. And the other 25% of the time, I get tired.
I mean, you are human.
Basically, yeah. And there are some people who can do it, 99% of the time. I haven't cracked the code yet.
That's crazy though, right?
Yeah,
because
they exist for sure. Though.
That's the route to burnout for me though.
I don't think it necessarily is the route to burnout. There are some people who have cracked the code, and I've spent time with them. A guy called George Heaton, who runs probably the fastest growing consumer brand in the UK, a brand called Represents, a massive clothing company. Over the last few years, he scaled it from I think they were doing 10 million 3 years ago. They're now doing 100 million in revenue. And he is somebody who has a consistently high performing mindset, and he orientates his entire life around executing on that. I think an important point is that he has no dependence. And what I've noticed about the people that can do it 100% of the time, they often are single people without elderly parents or children or even husbands and wives. And so I think those things do play a factor. And that is some of the reason why I forgive myself sometimes, because I have young children, a young family, and I'm married, and I have other things that I have to think about other than just myself and my company.
100%, because I am going through that internal dialogue myself, because obviously I'm married as well, have a young family, and I find the pace of what I'm used to executing at is just not a reality right now. And I'm constantly beating myself up about it, because I'm always like, God, why haven't you done this?
Yeah.
And oh my God, I've got so much on my to-do list, and it just keeps compounding and compiling.
Yeah.
But I'm like, there's just not enough hours in the day.
Right.
And I'm just sometimes my head is calm the fuck down.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
You're not like a brain surgeon. If things need to get pushed back, it's okay. But then the other side of me is God, you've let yourself go.
Yeah.
You've let yourself slip. And it's that internal dialogue. You're nodding. I'm guessing you've
resonates massively with me. I even my own team, the guys in my team, I'm pregnant, and I told my team recently, and I'm really tired, and I keep just getting up at 5 a.m. and really pushing myself. And the young guys in my team were like, Lottie, we've got this. You need to let yourself take a rest. Yeah. And then, but the other side of me, I know I'm growing human being, all of that shit. It's normal to feel tired, but the other side of me is we have really lofty goals. I set the example, and I can't let the side down. And for instance, that's something that someone like George Heaton will never have to think about. It's just not ever going to be a consideration for him. So I think the key is to be super realistic with your goals. And the other thing I've found is I'm much more comfortable in the last probably year delegating. So our business is doing better. We have a bit more cash, and I invest a lot of that cash into a cleaner, people to help look after my kid, other things that just
make life easy,
allow me to focus on my goal. And the key thing is to not feel guilty about that. And I'm definitely speaking from a place of privilege. I know everybody can't afford that. But a lot of the time for me, it's even leaning on my friends. My son's godmother will come and help us out for a day and things like that. So I think being comfortable with delegating other things so that you can focus on the things that are most important to you, and having strong prioritization is really important. I'm not going to feel guilty for not cleaning my house. I have to let it go. Yeah.
There's a priority list.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, and you have to be comfortable with the priorities.
Yeah. 100%. Just on that, it's really interesting because you're right. Male founders and entrepreneurs and people in business don't have the same weight of responsibilities that, unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because I don't know, again, internal dialogue and maybe controversial, do we bring it on ourselves, or is it kind of society and the expectations that society has that, we're mothers, obviously biologically, we create the baby from skin, bone, limb, whatever. But actually, when you do have a personality outside of being a mother, right? You have your passion, you have your goals, you want to chase after your purpose in life. And there's a lot of guilt also that's placed.
Yeah.
How do you deal, or how do you kind of navigate through that?
It's such a interesting question. And I think, there's probably maybe a male founder who has children might listen to this and be like, well, I have kids, I have to, share the parental load, etc. But I think a couple of things. I think firstly, a lot of people who are male have a wife, right? And this is a broad sweeping statement, but it is generally true. They typically have a wife who either works a more reasonable job or doesn't work at all. And what that means is they don't have to think about what I call the unpaid labor, which is probably what I think I spend half a day a week doing. And that's a lot of time if you add it up over a year. And I think that expectation is just automatically put on women. I think I have yet to meet many households where that labour doesn't fall on women. It just does. Like who's buying the birthday present for the kids' party, and who's organising the babysitter, and who's booking the kids' clubs, and like all of this stuff. I think for me, I've had to free myself of the guilt. So I really have had to, a bit like I was talking before, one of the things we were really intentional about when we first had our child was making sure that we let him spend time with other people. So he went to nursery when he was 3 months old. He started staying over at my dad's house when he was 4 months old. And that's meant that he's super comfortable going to anyone. And we've built this like crew of people. And, you know, back in the day, villages did raise children.
100%.
And so we've tried to kind of create our own village. And so therefore, whenever I leave, which is quite often, I've been on like maybe 20 trips abroad this year, he's with people who really love him. And so that definitely eases the guilt for me, because I'm like, oh, I've left him with my mum. She adores him. He's going to have an amazing time.
And he's going to have the best time
ever.
Yeah,
Exactly. Or I've left him with my friend and I know she's going to make it amazing for him. So that definitely helps. And the second thing is, like, I'm not ashamed of the fact that I have massive goals and I am allowed to be a good mum and have big goals and pursue them at the same time. And nobody's going to tell me different. And I also have a husband who's like, go you. So, you know, that helps. But I think letting go of this idea that when you become a mother, you suddenly have to put that as your number one overall priority over everything else. And it's not an expectation that's put on men. And I feel you just have to feel comfortable with that. And if you can't get there, maybe you do want to prioritize being a mum over everything else. And that's, you know, perfectly okay too.
Yeah.
But you've got to be comfortable with your choices, right?
And that's what it comes down to. It's you owning your choice.
Exactly.
And I think it was Michelle Obama and Oprah that were like, you know, that there's this perception that women can have it all. You can have the career and the family and the baby and everything in between. But actually she was like, you can have it all, but just not at the same time. And for me, I was like, oh, light bulb moment, because I was like, okay, that's a different perspective where you can have the family life, but you can't be present for bedtime and bath time and making home cooked meals and stuff like that whilst trying to run a business or have a high flying career and you're like bouncing around the world. It's not possible. So actually, why are we creating this dream where we're idolizing something that isn't even real?
I just don't know. I literally had this conversation about 10 times at the weekend with other women who are building companies and have young families. I think that we have it wrong with the term have it all. Like, I feel like I do have it all. I do have a young family. I'm growing a multi-million-pound company, and I have made some decisions to let go of some things. So I don't cook, like maybe once a week if you're lucky, and you probably don't want to eat it anyway. So I'm not very good at it. I'm not embarrassed. Like, I don't cook. Like, there's plenty of good food options. He eats a really healthy diet. There's things like I said, I don't really clean. Yeah. Like, my mum comes to my house, I pay her, she does all my washing and ironing. Not sorry. So, like, I feel like you can have it all, but you have to define your own definition of what that is. And for me, that isn't picking my son up every day of the week. It's not dropping him off every day of the week. Is it making sure that he feels insanely loved? And I'm very passionate about him developing as a human, and I'm very into that, and I really care about it. And I think no one would meet my son and see him and say he's not happy and loved. Yeah. Like, it totally is. Do I do all of it though? Do I tick all of the boxes? No, not sorry. But I think you can have it all, but you have to define your own version of having it all. And you have to be comfortable with letting go of society's version of having it all, which is that you're like home at 6 o'clock cooking dinner. Like you said, that's not possible. But I think the term in itself is just flawed, because my version of having it all and your version of having it all be completely different. And
that's okay.
And it's totally okay.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that's where my problem is that it's like that bucket that is so fixed, and it's like it should be the same for everyone. And it's like, we are so different as individuals.
Exactly.
Why the hell would it be the same?
Right.
And it goes like it's applicable in every situation, whether it's your career or your approach to business or when and how you start a family. Yeah. It's like that lifeline trajectory where it's like, you need to be married by this date.
Exactly.
Blah, blah, blah. And it's like, actually, shit happens, life happens. It doesn't work like that. So why are we all trying to judge each other by the same, or like, what's the terminology? By the same cloth.
Yeah, I know, but I know exactly what you mean. And for me, I really think the key to a happy life is being really clear on what you want and being totally comfortable when you make the choice. And that is why people get themselves caught up in knots, because maybe they decide to stay at home, but they feel guilty for not working, or they go to work and they feel guilty for not staying at home. But I don't feel guilty. I feel perfectly comfortable with my choices. And some weeks, you know, somebody else might look at my life and be like, has she even seen her child? And I'll be like, okay, I need a little course correct here because that went a little off kilter. But broadly, I'm like, this is working for my family and I feel comfortable with it. So that's good by me. And if you don't like it and you don't agree with it, it's none of my business, frankly. You know?
Just on that, when the balance does go off,
Which
on
it
a
does.
tangent,
Yeah.
and it's life, it's going to happen, right? How do you bring yourself back to, or how do you do a sense check? Like, how do you keep yourself honest?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess my people around me are quite honest with me.
Okay.
So my husband's quite honest with me, and my mum and dad are arguably too honest. And they'll be like, you know, it feels like it was a period for like a year where I worked every weekend. And, you know, I definitely wasn't like spending as much time with Otis as I should have been. And so, yeah, I've had to pull back. And I probably, even though our business has grown 700% this year, it's bigger than it's ever been. I've probably spent more time with Otis than I have in his life this year.
The squad around you.
Yeah, because of being comfortable to delegate to the squad. And that's also a cash thing. Like when I first started the business, I quit my 6-figure job to earn 20 grand a year. So I just didn't have the cash to be paying the squad. But now it's easier. And you're right. Like I think as mums, we have a gut feel. And, you know, my son's also old enough now to be very vocal.
Yeah.
Even like when I was packing to go to Portugal on Thursday morning, he came in, he was like, I just really, really don't want you to go. Oh. So
God, how do you deal with that?
Yeah, I'm like, well, I got shit to do. You're going to be fine. Like he had actually an amazing weekend lined up with people that were coming to look after him and take him places. And I knew the minute I was gone, he wasn't going to be bothered. And he wasn't. He didn't even really want to talk to me on the phone while I was, do you know what I mean?
Typical.
He's like forgotten me once I'm there. But then I like for the next 2 weekends, me and him are just hanging and we're together. So, I think as a mum, you sort of know when they're like missing you and when they need you. And it's also just easier now because I have a proper team in the office and I can just take my foot off the gas. But I also had to know that for sort of 2 years, I was going to have to make some sacrifices. And I did. And I think that's why we are where we are now.
It paid off.
It paid off. So I don't regret it really.
I think that's the part, isn't it? It's the seasons. And
that's exactly the word,
It's knowing that it's not the same the whole way through.
Yeah, and it's never going to be.
Yeah.
I think seasons is that I've used that to describe before. I think it's such an on point term. Like we go through seasons and there'll be times like we took a month off this year and we hung out with him for a month and it was amazing. Yeah. And, you know, also because we made the sacrifice, we now have the freedom to do that. Yeah. Whereas if we were in a job, we wouldn't have been able to do that.
That's the thing.
So I feel like you have to trust your gut, but you also have to just know that, these things do work in seasons and you'll get through that to the other one.
You talked a lot around like kind of internal dialogue and self-doubt, especially, is something that, and imposter syndrome as well. I'm going to throw all of that into the mix because I think it's something that regardless of where you're at in your career or life, it's something that you always will face in some form.
For sure.
And I remember, so at work, I'm also a facilitator and I've been doing it for the best part of a decade. But every time I'm facilitating or presenting or speaking, I'm like, God, someone pass me a bucket because I'm about to vom.
Yeah.
And I asked one of my mentors who's been in the game for like 50 odd years. And I was like, God, does this ever change? Like, does this ever stop? And he was like, if you're not trying to vom in a bucket before you go on, you're doing something wrong. And I was like, wow, okay. And I had to like sit with that for a bit because I was like, actually, why am I nervous? Because I know my shit. I know what I'm doing. I know it like the back of my hand. But actually, it's the fear and I'm embracing the fear, and you go and do the damn thing anyway.
Yeah, of course.
But that fear just, I don't know, I feel like it accelerates or it exhilarates me in a way. And I know obviously everyone is different and deals with it differently, but I wanted to get your perspective and how you feel like in the run up to things or when you're about to go on, like what are you feeling and how do you push past it?
Yeah, I have suffered with extreme, almost debilitating self-doubt, especially in the early days of starting my company, because it was so alien to what I'd done before. And I really just didn't know what I was doing. And, you know, you're surrounded by the stats of essentially like making it. If you start your own company, it's like basically you're going to fail. The chances are you'll fail. You're more likely to fail than you are to succeed. And so I've had to develop some resilience to that. And one thing that I have found is that, you know, there's this amazing, do you know Alex Hormozy? You should follow him. He's intense, but says some good shit.
Nice.
Basically, he's like, you can shout affirmations in the mirror all you like, but nothing cures self-doubt like a stack of undeniable proof. And I have found that to be true in every stage of my career, where you can and should. I'm a big one for like affirmations and quotes and all the things. But really, the reason why I don't have as much self-doubt now is because I did the thing. So like I did get my company to £1 million of revenue, have the proof. Then I did get it to 5, have the proof. So I think the thing is you have to do the thing. Like there's no way to cure the self-doubt like doing the thing. And so I think it does get easier for me anyway. I think because you get to a certain point where you have a stack of undeniable proof to look back on. So now I'm like, we're trying to get our companies to £10 million of revenue. It's 1% of companies around the entire world will ever do that. It's very, very difficult to do. But I'm like, if I got to here, there's no reason why I can't get to there, because I've got proof that I am capable of leading to that point. So I think the thing is like, really think about what evidence you have to support you. Like you're saying about, you know, this comes up every time you do a specific thing, but you already did the thing like so many, many times. So you know you can do it. And that gives me confidence. And the other thing, I just did this really interesting exercise at the weekend on this founders retreat where they got us to name our what they call saboteur, and everyone has a saboteur within them. Your saboteur is the person who, mine is like, you're definitely not capable of doing that, you don't belong in this room, blah, blah, blah. And to really identify that character and identify their traits and know who they are when they come up and sort of like speak to them. Be like, look, I'm not going to tell you the name, it's a bit embarrassing, but, you know, look, X, like, I understand you're here. It's appropriate for you to be here in this time, but like I'm also going to bring out what they call allies, which is your positive. One of my positive allies is called Foxy Cleopatra. She's like super sexy, she's confident, she's like positive with other people, she encourages people. And it's about really like getting to know yourself. So you know when that saboteur comes up, and you can also like dig deep and be like, I'm going to lean into Foxy. I'm going to be Foxy today. Like she is coming up. That's who I need today. And I found that exercise really fascinating because I was like, I think it will really help me to like identify the person who comes up and to sabotage me and call them out and like be like, no, I'm not calling on you today. I'm actually calling on this ally that I have who's going to make me amazing today. So I thought that was an interesting exercise, but I also think you have to do the thing, basically. Yeah.
I find that really, I love that exercise. I'm so using that, by the way. So thank you for that, Gem. Because there's something about when you put a label on it or a name on it, you can actually identify and actually just single that thing out.
For sure.
Because otherwise it's just a fragment of your imagination where you're like, is it true? Like, what is it? Like, how do you even put a finger on it?
Exactly.
So I think it's that labeling. And I have an issue with labeling, but I think that kind of labeling is great.
Well, it's all about you. It's internal and it's like your choice to define it how you want to, right? So I think that is a really helpful thing to do. You know, the other thing is a friend of mine started a really cool company called Birotation. Do you know it?
No.
You have to get on it.
Birotation?
Yeah, you have to use it. It is a fashion rental company.
Oh, nice.
No, honestly, once you pop, you won't stop. Like, you can rent, they've got Hermes bags on there, they just launched, but you could rent them for like £100 to have them for like a week or whatever. No. Yeah, like, if I go to a wedding or anything, you know, that's an occasion, rent the dress. Like, the dress is, anyway.
There you go,
I'm not
guys.
here to plug her company. I haven't talked enough about mine. But she always says, if not you, then who? If not now, then when? And I think that's such a beautiful thing. Like, if not me, then somebody else is going to go and do this. Why not me? Like, why not? And then if not now, then when are you going to do it? Like, there's no reason why it can't be you, you know?
And there's no such thing as a right time.
Yeah, that's for sure true.
Like, I mean, you started this business off with, what, a baby on your lap?
For sure.
Your boob, because I know you're breastfeeding. Yeah. So it's like, if anyone in their right mind would be like, that is not the right time to start a business. But actually, when is the bloody right time to start a business?
There isn't one. And so many people, I think, live a life of where they don't fulfill their potential and they don't fulfill their dreams because there's always a reason not to do the thing.
And then I feel like that's where resentment comes in as well, because you're like, oh, that should have been me. But actually, they were ballsy enough to go after what they wanted. So exactly. You can't sit back. And I always say, like, I've wanted to do this podcast for years, and then I got pregnant, and then it was lockdown, and then I was like, my career was taken off, so I was like, focus on your career.
It's always a thing.
And then I was like, do you know what? Fuck it.
Yeah.
I literally fuck it. I'm gonna just start. And I was like, there's so many other podcasts out there. Why you?
There'll always be a reason.
Exactly. And I think that was kind of one of the main things that I found. Also, speaking to other people, they were like, oh, like, it's just not the right time. It's not the right time. Like, almost like a bit of a Debbie Downer kind of vibe. And
people love to do that.
That's not the attitude, people. We just need to, if you've got an idea,
go
what's
for it.
the worst that could happen?
Right. No one listens to your podcast.
But great. You learn.
You had a great time doing it.
I had fun. Brilliant. I met people. I had great conversations. Exactly. I learned loads of shit about myself and the world. So yeah, there's never a loss when you're investing in yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, you come across as a really confident person. Can you be confident and insecure at the same time?
Everybody is. Like, I don't know anybody who's not insecure to some degree, apart from maybe my husband. He's very, very sure of himself. But yeah, and that's one of the things I've enjoyed most about the rooms I've been lucky to be in, especially over the past couple of years. Like, some of the people I've been lucky enough to meet have been like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm sitting next to this person or whatever. When you get under the skin of it, you realise that they are all just people who doubted themselves but took the risk anyway. I personally think most successful people in the world are driven by either insecurity or trauma. Ooh. I found it to be a very common pattern between successful people. That is, they have a point to prove. I do. I have a diminishing year by year, but I have a massive chip on my shoulder about, going to certain schools and everybody in the schools was like significantly more wealthy than me. So like at my first school, I went to a good school in Surrey that my grandparents pretty much paid for, and my mum and dad couldn't afford a car. So we would like have to walk with all the shopping and the bags would break, and like my school friends would drive past in their Range Rovers and like our bags would be broken. And it developed a real thing in me that was like, I'm going to show everybody. Not that anyone fucking cares, but like I need to prove it. Yeah. I've got a point to prove. And I have found that with most people who are really driving themselves. They got a point to prove to someone. It's really driven by insecurity or,
That's so interesting because you are so right. Like even in every kind of, like Stephen Bartlett, he's
point to prove.
Always talks about that. That's so interesting.
Yeah, I found it to be a common theme, and it's why I'm, my son's grown up very differently to how I did. Nobody's, flying a private jet around here, but we're very comfortable yet. Yeah, but we're comfortable in a way that I wasn't when I was growing up.
100.
And I have a real, this is one of the reasons I took him out of school, actually, is I have a real desire to make him somehow suffer. I know that sounds like a really weird thing to say, but I want him to understand that life is hard. Yeah. And I want something to happen to him to make him appreciate and understand that nothing comes easy. And right now his life's just super easy.
Yeah. It's so funny you say this because me and my husband have the same view.
Yeah.
So we both
we're really lucky. Like our parents work, so our parents are first generation immigrants. We're
Yeah,
second. And our parents put us through private education, but it was fucking hard for them. Like, they worked
tirelessly,
like ridiculous hours to make sure that me and our respective families like went through it. And me and my husband, we always think like, God, these kids have it.
They don't know.
Easy.
They don't know they were
like
born.
Anything they want, they get.
Yeah.
They've like literally living a life of privilege. And like you said, like we're not multi-millionaires.
Uber wealthy.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm like, and my husband specifically is like, I'm going to get them to work as soon as like they're a certain age, just so that they understand and appreciate the value of money.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's so true, because especially in this day and age, like my nephew, who's 12 years old, by the way, was like, I want to get a job. And I was like, oh, like, why don't you, like, you know, when you're 16, go to Tesco's, you can stack some shelves, and you'll understand like actually how much it like takes to earn a decent wage to get a pair of trainers or whatever. And he said to me, oh, but I could just post something on TikTok and I could earn like £1,000 for an amount of views that I get.
Right. They're
and
growing
I was
up in
like,
a different world.
Oh my God, this generation is fucking screwed.
Yeah, they are.
Because the perception is so far from reality. And also, like, what is the chance of you going viral, and how many...
But you know what? It's funny you should say that. I just did a couple of talks at some very good private schools, a couple of speeches about entrepreneurship. And I asked the teachers, like, well, what do they say when you say, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they said they all just say they want to be millionaires. Like, that's the plan. And they're like 17.
Yeah.
And I really think that what they don't understand is I've worked a lot with creators, right? Like quite big influencers. Those people work so hard. I know it looks
like overnight
easy,
success,
but like they are out there posting, planning posts. I'm trying to like do content creation myself. Like I can't do it. It's just so hard.
You've got to experiment. You've got to test.
Like Mr. Beast, you know, Mr. Beast basically sat in his room since he was 12 years old, sitting on YouTube and creating YouTube videos from 6 a.m. till 10 p.m. for 15 years nearly. He's been doing it. That is how he became and if you really understand his story, the man is obsessed with YouTube. Like the way he works is, I mean, someone with a high performance mindset, look at Mr. Beast. Like the way he works is unmatched. It's unbelievable the way he works. Like he's a legend. Everyone knows, like, he's ridiculous. His work ethic is beyond. And it doesn't matter whether you want to be a creator or you want to run a company. There isn't a single person who's done it without an unbelievable amount of hard work.
And obsessing, like you said, like you've got to be obsessed with your product or your end goal.
Everything.
You've got to just live it, breathe it, be it, essentially. Isn't it?
When you hear him talk about analytics on YouTube, like, it's mind blowing. Like, you won't even keep up with the conversation I'm like, always talk about. He's obsessed with it. And like, yeah, I think, well, look, they're kids, right? I think they underestimate what they need to do because it looks easy.
So much easier.
But I definitely like, I want my son to like sometimes be embarrassed and this sounds like so strange, but I've just really noticed the pattern that the people who really gun for it are the people who have A, a point to prove, and B, have experienced what it's like to not feel good, to not have success, to not have money. My brother's like super successful, and he always talks about the fact that we used to go to do our weekly shop, and my dad, it was like before the days when you could just check your bank balance, right?
Yeah.
And my dad would like inevitably not have enough money in his account to pay for food. So like all the people would be queuing up behind us, and then he'd be like, right, put the biscuits back, put the crisps back, put all the treats back. Okay, now put the kitchen towel back. Like he'd start listing off the things that go back, and then he'd be like, how much is it now? How much is it now? And that experience for him was so humiliating that he is like, well, he's a millionaire and he's obsessive about money. And the reason is because he's like, I can never stand at that fucking checkout again and not have enough money to pay for the food. And so I think it's important that somehow we make him.
You need to face some hardship.
You need to face some hardship. We make him face some hardship.
And it's also to appreciate.
Yeah, exactly.
It's to appreciate and have gratitude for like, actually, there is blessings in everything that we have the privilege to actually embrace. And I think that's so important, especially in today's environment where everything just looks easy. And I always say like social media is like 1% of your life.
Totally.
No one's sitting there posting. Well, now there's more of this.
But
where
even so, it's selective.
it's selective, right? Because no one's doing it like in the moment there and then.
You're on point.
It's pre-planned. It's
Totally.
on a tripod, and you've got your angle. And I'm crying, but you know what I mean. It's not real. It's not real life. And I think that's what scares me the most about the next generation, where they see this version of life, and it's like, honey, like that's not how it works. And I think for that point on like feeling uncomfortable and feeling the discomfort and feeling the sadness and the pain and the frustration and the fear, and letting them understand that that's all normal and that's okay. And actually, we all know that growth happens on the other side of comfort. And on the other side of comfort is a lot of fear.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fear around it, right? And how we, as adults, feel the fear. Some of us run away from it. Some of us go head first into it. And I think there's a real difference, right? You see the difference in those that stay in the comfort zone and push past it and feel it and do it anyway. What's like your biggest advice for those that are like on the cusp of it and are like, fuck, I'm so scared. I know I need to do this. How? Like, where do they even begin from a mindset checkpoint?
It's a big question. For me, I am really motivated by the feeling I'm going to have whenever my time comes at the end. And I always feel like, I just feel like I'm capable of so much, which I think is true of every single person on planet Earth, regardless of where you started or what your kind of, you know, qualifications or level of skill is as defined by society. I think I always, like when I'm thinking about doing something and when I'm afraid to do it, I always think, how am I going to feel in 5 years' time when I didn't take the risk and I'm standing in exactly the same place? Like right now I'm doing more personal brand work and I'm like, I just got signed by a speaking agent and I'm like, oh, you know, I really should like create a website and should hire a personal brand manager and I should like lean into this. I should really make this into something. And I'm like, on the flip side, I'm like, oh, but no one cares what I have to say. And, you know, who do I think I am? Getting a personal brand, like, you know, he went on Dragon's Den, fucking yippee. And then I'm like, imagine if in 5 years I lean into this, and imagine if like this creates an incredible income stream and I inspire hundreds of thousands of people. Like, imagine how amazing that is going to feel in 5 years' time. So then I'm like, oh, fuck it. Just give it a go. If no one cares, no one cares.
What have you got to lose?
Well, what have I got to lose?
You've got
Nothing.
more to gain.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm going to give it a try. And I just cling on to this feeling of, I know if in 5 years, or 1 year, 2 years time, I look back, I'm going to be so disappointed in myself that I didn't give it a try. And I'm going to feel like now I'm just 2 years further down the line, right?
Yeah.
So I always just kind of try and future feel it.
Yeah, I love
and
that.
And think like, oh, how am I going to feel? And especially when I think like, you know, whenever my time comes, I just want to look back and say to myself, I just gave it my best shot.
Yeah.
And I did the things I really, really wanted to do.
And you went after it.
And I went after it. And if I can say that to myself, then I'll feel good, you know?
I love that. I think that's such a important perspective, because in hindsight, it's always like we always look at things once it's happened.
Yeah.
But actually, if you flip it on its head and you think, actually, in the future,
yeah,
what would I feel?
Yeah.
And it's always the what ifs always outweigh what you've actually done.
For sure.
So it's just do the damn thing. That's what we're taking away.
Yeah.
I love that. Just on resilience, because we spoke about resilience. What does resilience mean for you personally?
Essentially, it means failing, being able to fail and get back up on your feet and not let the failure destroy you, which is difficult. And I do feel it really now with my company, especially since we've been very public about the fact that it's us two doing it, and we've been very out there about it. I'm always very vocal about numbers. I don't shy away from it. So I feel like, oh my God, it would be so embarrassing if we failed, which, by the way, we could get to any point and it could still fail. That's just the nature of the beast. And I think I've failed. This journey has been amazing because it's been like riddled with continuous failure. Almost like every day, or maybe not every day now, but every week I just had a piece of news this morning. I'm like, I totally fucked that up. Like I've made a really big mistake and it's going to cost us a lot of money. And so I think it's been really good for me because I've failed so much that it really is just like water off a duck's back now. And the good sort of example of it is fundraising that I've pitched 250 times and I've got 12 people on my cap table. So you do the math. I got rejected 238 times. Wow. And that's due to people telling me I'm not the right person to build this. It's too competitive. You're not doing anything different. Like millions of things people are giving you day after day. And when you're like in a pitching mode, you're doing it for like 3 or 4 months. So you're going to meetings, getting knocked back. You're going to meetings, you're getting knocked back. And honestly, probably the first 50 times it happened to me, I was like, I want to quit. This is embarrassing. Nobody thinks I'm good enough. I'm not good enough. Like, this is a bad idea. It's a bad idea. And I had to find a way to like keep going, else the thing is basically going to not happen. And now I get rejected and I'm like, great, on to the next one. I don't care. I get told every day it's not different, it's not thing. And I'm like, well, we're making millions of pounds, so it can't be that bad. And it's totally like, I just don't care. And I'm actually really grateful for wherever this, journey ends up. I'm really grateful for that because I've got a much thicker skin. And it's actually really helped because my husband was a professional athlete, right? So from a very young age, he's so used to getting that. They get feedback in a way that if you when I worked in a company, you'd wait for your quarterly review.
Yeah,
you might get some negative feedback once every quarter or whatever. But he would be on a Saturday, firstly, people would be chanting at him in the stands. And then he'd go on the fan forum and they'd be like, Joe Gray's shit. I don't know why he's in the team. And then he'd go into the coach's room on Monday and they'd be like, you dropped, you were shit. And so he was like, I don't know why you care so much. And he's always been like that. So it's been really useful because he's already had 10 years of getting rejected very blatantly and rudely. And so I think the thing about rejection and resilience is you're not going to get better at it unless you allow yourself to be in situations where you fail. And you just have to go through those things. That motion. You just have to go through those motions, and then you have to be sooner or later you just get very used to it.
But that is so brutal.
It's brutal, yeah.
And to hear, because it's so personal and it's literally what must feel like a personal attack on you.
Yeah.
Who you are to your core.
Yeah.
And it's such a hard thing to digest for,
it really
for anyone.
Is. Yeah, for sure,
right? Yeah. But to almost bounce back from it and go again and go again. There's almost what I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm hearing is that you're trusting the process and you're learning the lessons along with the losses. And actually you're, from everything in this discussion and from what I've known about you before, it's all about actually, regardless of where this ends up and what we do with it in the future, it's actually here and now, what we're taking away from this right now, and then how we're putting that back into what we're developing and implementing and how we're going to be better. And I always say it's a bit of a 10x situation where what you do today isn't going to be enough for tomorrow. So how do you 10x yourself to improve?
It's a tough one because there's a level of taking people's feedback and using it to improve. And for me, I have learned that you really have to filter the opinions. So I take anyone in my team tells me I'm not doing something right. I'm really going to listen to that because I need them to feel, this is a great place to be and I'm listening to them and all of those things. If my family pretty much tell me, and I've had that this summer where, my dad I asked him for some feedback about, myself, and he was very honest and it was really hurtful. It was I cried. I was like, oh my God, but I needed to hear it and I've taken it on board and I'm going to improve. But, there's also a level of conviction that you have to have if you're going to do something. It's like someone could come to you and be like, look, this podcast isn't going to go anywhere. You have to also have the ability to filter out the noise and be like, well, I don't really care because I think it does. And if I'd listened to 238 people, I wouldn't be sitting here now. I wouldn't have done the thing.
That's true.
So for me, it's like you have to be able to filter out whose opinion matters and whose doesn't. And for me, that's like, you know, there's 10 people in my life who absolutely have my best interests at heart. And therefore, I know they're only telling me things because they think it will genuinely help me improve.
And you trust.
And I trust them. Everyone else can go swivel, frankly, because like you don't know what I'm about. You just looking at a market and you don't think I'm the right person because I'm a mixed race woman and those people don't raise money or build companies or like whatever. I don't know what your biases are or your feelings are or like I don't know.
Yeah.
So for the most part, I don't care. And that's what I was saying about motherhood. It's like, you know, unless my mum's going to be like, you were neglecting that child, then like I don't care if you're what your opinion is because I'm living my life as I want to, and I have a dream and I believe in myself. So it's a tough one because if you sit there taking everyone's opinions,
You're just not going to go anywhere.
You're never going to go anywhere. It's debilitating. It's totally going to stop you. And I think that's what happens to a lot of people. It's like you said when you wanted to start this thing. You know, you had people who were like, it's a bad idea. I don't think you should do it. But you had a level of conviction that was like, well, I want to. And I think it could work. So I'm going to give it a go anyway.
Yeah.
So I think it's a delicate balance. And knowing who the people are who you're going to really trust and who you know will only come to you and tell you things because, you know, it's authentic and to a degree it's true. And they're always trying to help you improve from a genuine place. Take it, listen, like have a growth mindset about it. But if it's like some fucking random investor, tell them to fuck off. Don't do that. But like,
it is
say I'm not listening.
It is taking that like no fucks given approach though, isn't it?
A little bit.
With a pinch of salt.
Yeah, it's just like I'm saying, it's a bit of a balance. You never want to become that person that's I'm too big for anyone to tell me.
Like humble yourself.
Yeah, be humble, but
yourself.
have conviction.
Yeah.
Like if you have a dream, like honestly, 10 million people could tell me this is a bad idea and I'm still going to make it happen because I believe I can make it happen.
It goes back to that gut feel though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like if you know and you believe in yourself and you know what you're capable, and no one knows what you're capable of more than you do.
Yeah, exactly.
So actually, if you have the confidence and you wholeheartedly back yourself, and we don't talk about that enough, about backing yourself, because we always back everyone else.
Exactly.
But we never back ourselves.
Right.
And I'm so guilty of that.
Yeah.
But actually, if we put that energy into ourselves and, like you said, like brought out the foxies in us, and actually owned it, imagine what would happen.
Honestly, I just think that is so true. Like it's even true of me. I'd probably be running a £50 million company if I had more conviction. You know, like there's always still an element of like.
I know, but we're human.
But it's human, yeah.
Right?
But you have to. And the other thing I think is, I always say this to people is I go to the gym every day, and I think you should have some mental time with yourself every day. Because self-belief doesn't build itself. Conviction doesn't build itself. Being able to back yourself doesn't build itself. Just like you aren't going to get a tone bum from sitting on your ass. You know, I think people should invest more in their mental fitness and their ability to believe in themselves. And I, really try to like do that every day. Like when I go to the gym, I have this crazy American guy who's in my ears like, you can do anything, you're fucking amazing, blah, blah, blah. Little things like that. Or the books I read, or I'm always like muting people on my fucking Instagram because I'm like, if you literally don't massively inspire me, then not that I'm not gonna look. It's just like I've got to be really focused on getting this mindset. And so I think people sometimes think that people are just confident or they do just believe and they were born like that. But it's just not the reality. Like you have to work on it.
It's muscle memory as
well. It's totally,
Like, it's exactly what you said. It's you are what you consume, what you're reading, what you're seeing, who you're talking to. Exactly. And it's like actually, if you look at who you're sitting at the table with and having conversations with in your day-to-day life, and they're not helping you grow, they're not inspiring you, and they're not moving in the same lane or trajectory as you are, why are you sitting at the table?
I think that is such a powerful statement, and I've actually written a lot about it like on LinkedIn and stuff, because I think people underestimate the power of the other people around you. And I also think people are you know, wedded to relationships that just because of like longevity or like blah, blah, blah.
Relationship, like your family. So you have
Yeah,
to-
exactly.
yeah.
But I learned this. Do you know Charmadean Reed?
Yeah.
She's an amazing woman. She's a great ball of energy. And I spent a little bit of time with her a few years ago. And one of the things she really taught me about was in the theatre of your life, you can move people around to the front row and you can move them to the back row. And nobody has to leave the theatre. And you should always be extremely mindful of who is on your front row. And so it's like, I've got friends I've had for 20 years, right? And now our lives aren't lining up. Like maybe they don't have they're not as ambitious as I am, or they're not gunning for the same things as I am. And so when we spend time together or when we have conversations, I don't come away feeling like, and that's how I want to feel when I spend time with someone. So it's like my front row's changed, you know, and I even had this conversation with a very close family member recently. I said, you should just be negative. And if you're going to continue to be negative, you have to go to the back row. Like we can stop spending so much time together because I just can't have that. And to be fair, she was like, I get it, got it. That's cool. But like, yeah, I'm very cool about being like, okay, you people, I'm doing this business thing right now. So most of my closest friends are also doing the business thing and we're all like G'ing each other on. And like, and then my closest friends haven't left the theatre. I just spend a bit less time with them and I, you know, engage a little bit less and maybe we'll come back together at a different time in our life. But I think the people you surround yourself with have arguably, apart from being in your own head, working on your own mindset, they're probably second in terms of what you can go on and do. If you're not around people who are like clapping for you, they don't make you feel good, back row.
There's a so true and really resonates. And there was this quote that I saw that was like, was it a quote? Or one of these coaches was saying online, she was like, if you want to know who your real friends are and your real cheerleaders, start a business and see who shows up.
See who advocates.
And
for
I
you.
was like, oh my God.
Right.
So true.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's like, I don't know, I feel like maybe culturally we're very like, oh, okay, like that's how you are, like let's just bypass you and go. But actually we don't say like, right, you're not serving me anymore.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
You do you, but I'm going to go and do me. And it's that permission that we're not giving ourselves permission to be like you said, front row.
Yeah.
There you go.
And you feel so, you know, I think it's when you've had a long relationship with people who've been in your life for a long time and you've got shared experiences and memories that often you feel terrible about that. But, you know, it's so funny because this is really fresh in my mind because at the weekend, one of the sessions we did with these 30 founders was somebody said I did an audit of my friends and it made me feel dirty because it's like, ooh, I can't do this to my mates. They've been my mates for 20 years. Yeah. But he said he was sat in a room with his closest friends and he felt lonely. He felt no one was really advocating for him or understanding where he was at. And so he he literally created a sheet and it was like kind of scoring his friends, like to himself. Obviously he didn't tell anyone. He's like, okay, and actually there's some new people that have come into my life. And, you know, when we get older, it's like, oh, we're not going to go and make new friends because I'm too old. And actually he was like, I love that person. And I'm going to proactively reach out to that person to bring them into my life. And I'm going to say, let's go do this thing together. And it was so interesting because he was like, I'm a year in and I feel completely differently. And I've not sacked any friends. I've not said I don't want you to be around anymore. I'm not coming to your wedding or whatever. It's just like, I've just been really disciplined about I don't have much time to spend with friends. So I'm going to do it with people who I'm going to come away like, fuck yeah.
Give you that energy.
Give you energy, yeah.
And energy never lies.
Yeah.
Energy never lies. And I'm such a big believer of that. I feel like if you dread meeting someone or going to an event, why the fuck are you
doing it? And so many of us spend our time doing that.
100%.
You feel
because
obligated.
Of obligation. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly that.
It's a bit like why I don't lean that much into generally the mum stuff. I know that sounds really awful. But I'm like, I don't want to come to the school quiz. I'm not coming. That is not going to make me feel.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't want to go, so I'm not going. And I don't feel like that. Kind of to your point about like the obligation. Like I'm just not going. So that's that.
And I think that's so powerful because we don't give ourselves enough permission.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of it stems back to permission based and it starts with you. And I think if you give yourself permission to own you, protect your energy and your space.
And there's so little of it, especially when we're in this phase of our lives 100%. With family and the job and running around after the kids' parties all weekend. It's like the time is so finite. So it's like you have to be selective.
I'm waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning just to squeeze in some me
Everything.
time.
Exactly.
Literally.
Exactly. But that's why it's like, you're so right. If you ever have the feeling of dreading, I feel like that with some of our couple friends as well, you know, and you're like, this isn't really going to fill
like
my cup.
3 hours on a weekend.
Yeah, exactly. Like, who are you going to choose to spend it with?
100%.
Or maybe you're just going to be like, shut the doors.
Honestly, we did that this weekend.
So nice.
Me and Cam were like, this is what weekends should be like.
Yeah.
We literally drove in the car to put the little one to sleep, and we were just talking, and I was like, this is amazing.
So nice. You know, the other thing is about like your connection with your husband, like
100%.
with your spouse. It's like, if you're not careful, like everything else just racks up ahead of it, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, we don't spend any time together.
It was this quote. It's really interesting. You said that there's this quote. I love quotes, so I'm quoting a lot.
No, me
quotes,
too.
Where they were like, you know, you're so busy doing life and lifing that you can often neglect your partner.
Yeah.
And actually, when life is done, and when I say life, I mean like the busy part of life, and your kids are grown and they're off living their life, you're ending up with your partner who you know nothing about.
Right.
Because
It's kind of scary, isn't it?
Isn't it just because I feel like you're out of all of the like immediate family relationships that you have, you don't choose your parents.
Yeah.
You also don't choose your siblings.
Yeah.
But you choose your partner.
Exactly.
And you've made a choice to commit and love them and be with them. And yet you don't nurture that relationship.
This is so on point for me. Obviously, I've just spent this weekend reviewing my life. So I've done a lot of like thinking.
Self-reflection.
No, yeah. One of those sessions was a couple. He's an entrepreneur and she's like got a big job. And they've got children, and they did a session on relationship OKRs. And they took us through how basically like a couple of years ago, they've been going through like just bickering and they like weren't really getting on. And so basically in the same way that you would for a company or you would for your team, they set themselves together some collective OKRs. So like one of the things was like, you know, we have to go to the gym together twice a week. That's one of our OKRs. And they really mapped out like, what matters to us? What are our unmet needs in this relationship? And like, what are the things, that actions we can take weekly and hold each other to account? And at first I was like, oh my God, another fucking thing I have to like do.
Plan and do.
Yeah, exactly. But actually I was like, this is genius, because you spend all this time, like I would never run my team at MyoMaster without having clear goals and like checking in with each other. Are we delivering? Why are you doing it with your 100%. Most important relationship of all? Yeah. And like you said, how do you not lose yourselves in amongst the absolute chaos that is life in this stage of life?
Absolute chaos.
I thought it was beautiful. So me and Joe have got a date tonight to do our chaos.
Oh, nice.
We're going to give it a try.
And also change of environment as well is so key when you do that. We've got a date in the diary to do our planning for next year. And this is the first time that we're going to do it.
What is that? Like, what are you going to plan?
So 2025, like what do we want to do? What's our goals? We need to coordinate our lives, like admin shit, but also goals.
Yeah,
and like,
what do you want to achieve?
What is your purpose? And I'm like, in the last kind of 5, maybe even 8 years, we've done a lot of personal sacrifices. Yeah. And I'm like, it's just never going to stop. Yeah. So actually, the time is now where we stop and we put ourselves first. Yeah. And not selfishly, but you also have to be selfish to be giving to others, because you can't pour from an empty cup. Exactly. And if you feel like you're giving up on everything that's really important to you,
so on point,
it's going to lead it to
which
resentment.
can happen really easily at this stage in our lives, because you have to give to everybody before you give to yourself. Right?
Exactly. And I feel like we're also, because we're so busy giving to everyone else, we don't give to each other, which in turn just does a flip reverse, right?
Lead to a good place, does it? They did this thing where one of the things was that they both need alone time every week. And so they split the weekend into four halves, which is like Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon. And they each gave each other a half off every weekend. So like on a Saturday morning, the wife goes and she'll go to the gym, which has a spa, and she'll hang out there for a few hours. She'll read her book, and she comes back at 12 o'clock, like completely
new woman,
refreshed and renewed. And then he, like, I don't know what he likes to do, but he goes off on a Sunday morning and he does his own thing, takes himself out for breakfast, etc. And I thought that was like such a good way of being like, okay, we've both identified we need time alone, and so we're going to give that to each other, you know.
And I bet they show up differently as well in their relationships.
Exactly.
With each other and their families and their business as well. So I think that's so important and powerful. We have run out of time.
I know, I just saw that.
I just want to say thank you so much
Thanks for having me.
coming on to the podcast and being so open and raw and honest with your experiences, your season of life that you're in at the moment. And honestly, like everything that you said, like really resonated with me. And I know there's so many gems and exercises that I'm going to take away and learn and do.
I stole them from everybody this weekend.
It's all right, we're stealing it from you too. So yeah, just thank you so much. And I've really appreciated your insight into life and perspective.
You too, by the way.
Big love.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to Fearless Fireside Chats. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If today's conversation really resonated with you, I am so glad. But don't be a gatekeeper. Share it. This is more than just a podcast. It's a movement. A place where we can bring really tough conversations to light and give a voice to the voiceless and power to the unheard. Remember, you are not alone. So let's keep breaking down barriers, lifting each other up and pushing for a world where everyone feels seen and heard. Until next time, stay bold, stay brave, and keep being fearless.